The medical transport ship Mercy's Grace drifted silently through the asteroid belt that housed the most sacred site in human space. Inside the sterile white corridors, 8-year-old Marcus Chen pressed his small face against the viewport, his breathing mask fogging the reinforced glass as he stared in wonder at the massive structure ahead. The tomb of the first explorers wasn't like anything Marcus had imagined from the holovids. It was carved directly into the largest asteroid in the belt, its surface polished to mirror perfection. Golden letters in every human language spiraled around the asteroid's equator, telling the story of the 47 brave souls who had died establishing humanity's first permanent foothold beyond Earth's solar system. "Look, Mom," Marcus whispered, his voice weak but filled with excitement. "It's real." Dr. Sarah Chen touched her son's shoulder gently, fighting back tears. The doctors on New Terra had given Marcus 3 weeks to live. The rare neural disease that was eating away at his brain had no cure, no treatment that could buy them more time. When the Make-A-Wish Foundation asked what Marcus wanted most in his final days, his answer had surprised everyone. He didn't want to meet celebrities or visit exotic planets. He wanted to see the tomb guards. Marcus had been obsessed with the guards since he was 5 years old. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were the elite of the elite, chosen from every branch of humanity's military forces. Only 12 served at any time, standing eternal watch over the remains of the explorers who had died to give humanity the stars. The guards never spoke while on duty. They never broke formation. They had stood their posts without fail for over 200 years, through wars, disasters, and even alien first contact. They were living legends, and Marcus knew everything about them. "The ceremony changes in 20 minutes, announced Captain Rivera, the ship's commander. She had volunteered to personally escort the Chen family when she learned about Marcus's condition. "We'll dock at the civilian observation platform. You'll have a perfect view." Marcus nodded weakly. The platform was as close as civilians were allowed to get. The actual tomb chamber was restricted to official dignitaries and military personnel. But Marcus didn't mind. Just seeing the guards perform the changing of the watch would be enough. The docking process took 15 minutes. Marcus's father, Dr. James Chen, helped his son into a mobility chair as they disembarked. The observation platform was surprisingly small, designed to hold no more than 50 people at a time. Today, only a handful of other visitors were present, mostly elderly veterans who had made the pilgrimage to pay their respects. Through the transparent aluminum barriers, Marcus could see into the tomb chamber itself. The room was enormous, its walls carved with intricate reliefs depicting humanity's journey to the stars. In the center stood 12 obsidian pedestals, each bearing the name and image of one of the fallen explorers. Their actual remains had been placed in sealed chambers beneath the floor, but the pedestals served as focal points for remembrance. The current guards stood motionless at their posts. Each wore dress uniforms representing their service branch: Navy blue, Army green, Marine red, Air Force silver, and Space Force black. Their faces were hidden behind ceremonial masks, but their bearing spoke of absolute dedication. Marcus knew their names, their service records, their home planets. Guard Captain Elena Vasquez had served 3 tours fighting pirates in the Outer Rim. Sergeant Major David Kim had survived the siege of Kepler Station. Lieutenant Commander Sarah O'Brien had been decorated for rescuing colonists from a failing terraforming ship. "They're amazing," Marcus breathed, his eyes never leaving the guards. Dr. Chen knelt beside his son's chair. "Marcus, I know you're excited, but remember what the doctor said. If you get too tired, I know, Dad." Marcus's voice carried a maturity far beyond his years. "But I'm not tired. Not here." The chronometer on the wall showed 2 minutes until the ceremony. The tension in the chamber was palpable even through the barriers. The guards had begun their final preparations, checking weapons that would never be fired, adjusting uniforms that were already perfect. Then, without warning, alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Emergency lockdown initiated," an automated voice announced. "All personnel report to designated safe zones immediately." Captain Rivera's face went pale as she listened to her comm unit. "Pirates," she said tersely. "A whole fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding we surrender the station's defense grid codes." The other visitors began panicking, but Marcus remained focused on the guards. Through all the chaos, they hadn't moved. They stood at their posts, unmoved by the threat, ready to defend the tomb even if it meant their deaths. We need to evacuate, Dr. Chen said, starting to push Marcus's chair toward the exit. No, Marcus said firmly. Please, Dad, let me stay. Son, it's not safe. Please. Marcus looked up at his father with eyes that held too much understanding of mortality. If I'm going to die anyway, let me die watching them. Let me see what real courage looks like. The platform shuddered as weapons fire erupted somewhere in the station. Through the comm system, they could hear the pirate leader making demands. Surrender the codes to the tomb's defenses, or they would blast their way in and take whatever they wanted. The guards still hadn't moved. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. These weren't just soldiers following orders. They were guardians of something sacred, protectors of humanity's greatest heroes. Nothing, not pirates, not death, not the collapse of civilization itself, would make them abandon their posts. The battle was about to begin, and Marcus Chen, dying child of New Terra, had a front-row seat to witness what humanity was truly capable of when pushed to its limits. The guards were about to show the galaxy why humans were called the most stubborn species in known space. The pirate fleet hung in space like a pack of hungry wolves, their mismatched ships bristling with stolen weapons and jury-rigged armor plating. Their leader, a man called Scarface Tobin, had made his reputation raiding isolated colonies and merchant vessels. He commanded 40 ships and over 3,000 hardened criminals who had nothing left to lose. What Tobin didn't understand was that he had just threatened the most sacred site in human space. Inside the tomb chamber, Guard Captain Elena Vasquez received the emergency transmission through her helmet comm. The message was brief and to the point. Pirates demanding surrender, threatening to breach the tomb if their demands weren't met within 1 hour. Protocol was clear. In the event of hostile action against the tomb, the guards were authorized to take any measures necessary to protect the site. Any measures at all. But first they had a ceremony to complete. Marcus watched in fascination as the off-duty guards entered the chamber through a hidden door. They moved with mechanical precision, each step measured and deliberate. The changing of the watch had been performed exactly the same way for 2 centuries, and not even a pirate attack would alter the ritual. Incredible, whispered Captain Rivera. They're actually going through with it. The ceremony began with Guard Captain Vasquez stepping forward. Her voice, amplified throughout the chamber, carried the weight of tradition. We stand eternal watch over those who gave their lives so that humanity might reach the stars. Their sacrifice shall not be forgotten. Their memory shall not be dishonored. Their rest shall not be disturbed. The other guards responded in unison. Until the stars grow cold and the universe ends, we stand watch. One by one, the on-duty guards were formally relieved by their replacements. Each exchange included the ritual phrase, "I pass to you the sacred trust. Guard it well." The response was always the same, "I accept the sacred trust. I will guard it with my life." Meanwhile, the pirates grew impatient. Scarface. Tobin's voice crackled over the station's comm system. "You've got 30 minutes to open those defense grids or we start blasting. Don't think we won't do it. We've got enough firepower to crack this rock open like an egg." Dr. Chen tried again to convince his son to leave. "Marcus, please. The evacuation ships are waiting." But Marcus shook his head stubbornly. "They're not afraid, Dad. Look at them. They're not afraid at all." It was true. As the ceremony concluded and the new guards took their positions, there was no sign of fear or uncertainty. They stood as they always had, as they always would, until death itself claimed them. The tomb's automated defenses were formidable, but they were designed to protect against small threats, smugglers, vandals, the occasional terrorist. A full pirate fleet was beyond their capacity to handle. If the pirates were serious about their threat, they could indeed breach the tomb. Guard Captain Vasquez activated her suit's internal comm, speaking on a frequency only the guards could access. "Status report. Defense grid holding for now," reported Sergeant Major Kim. "But those pirates aren't bluffing. Sensors show enough concentrated firepower to overwhelm our shields." "Station security forces?" Vasquez asked. "Evacuated or hiding," Lieutenant Commander O'Brien replied. "We're on our own." "Good," Vasquez said simply. "That's how it should be." The guards had weapons, of course. Ceremonial they might appear, but each carried a military-grade pulse rifle and enough ammunition to wage a small war. Their armor, while traditional in appearance, incorporated the latest protective technologies. But 12 soldiers, no matter how elite, couldn't hold off 3,000 pirates indefinitely. They didn't need to hold off 3,000 pirates indefinitely. They just needed to hold them off long enough. Vasquez activated another comm channel, this one broadcasting on a frequency that would reach every human military installation within 50 light years. Her message was simple. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Tomb Guard Station requesting immediate assistance. Hostile forces are threatening to breach the tomb of the first explorers. Any vessels in range, please respond. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tomb Guard Station, this is Admiral Chen commanding the battleship Righteous Fury. We are 30 minutes out. Hold position. Tomb Guards, this is Colonel Martinez with the Marine Expeditionary Force. 20 minutes and closing fast. Vasquez, this is Captain Thompson on the destroyer Vengeance. 15 minutes. Don't let those bastards touch our heroes. The comms filled with responding voices. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of crew members all changing course to defend the tomb. They came from patrol routes, training missions, shore leave, it didn't matter. When the tomb was threatened, every human in uniform responded. Marcus listened to the transmissions with wonder. They're all coming, he whispered. Everyone's coming to help, but 15 minutes might as well have been 15 hours. The pirates had detected the incoming ships and decided to act before the cavalry arrived. Time's up, Scarface Tobin's voice boomed through the station. You had your chance. Now we take what we want. The first pirate assault ships launched from the main fleet, their engines burning bright as they accelerated toward the tomb station. Their plan was simple. Blast through the outer defenses, board the station, and loot everything valuable before the military ships arrived. What they found instead was 12 guards who had sworn an oath that meant more to them than life itself. Guard Captain Vasquez stepped to the chamber's central console and activated the tomb's emergency protocols. Blast shields slammed down over the observation platform, protecting the civilians. The chamber itself was sealed, its walls designed to withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons. If they want our heroes, Vasquez said quietly, they'll have to go through us first. The guards took firing positions around the chamber, their weapons trained on the sealed entrance. They knew the pirates would breach the outer doors eventually. When that happened, they would be ready. Marcus, safely behind the blast shields but still able to see through a narrow observation slit, watched the guards prepare for battle. His young mind couldn't fully comprehend the magnitude of what was happening, but he understood that he was witnessing something extraordinary. These 12 people were about to fight impossible odds to protect the memory of 47 others. They would probably die in the attempt, and they knew it, but they would not step aside. In that moment, Marcus Chen understood what it truly meant to be human. The first explosion shook the entire station as pirate charges detonated against the outer hull. Through the observation slit, Marcus could see the guards adjusting their positions with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this scenario countless times, though none had ever believed it would actually happen. Breach in Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Commander O'Brien, monitoring her suit's tactical display. They're cutting through the maintenance tunnels. Confirmed, Sergeant Major Kim added. Multiple entry points. They're trying to overwhelm us with numbers. Guard Captain Vasquez remained calm. Standard defensive formation. Make every shot count. The pirates had expected to find frightened security guards or perhaps a few token defenders. What they encountered instead was something that defied their understanding of warfare. The first wave of boarders burst through a service hatch expecting easy victims. Instead, they found Guard Corporal Jackson waiting for them. His pulse rifle spoke once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. 3 pirates dropped before the others even realized they were under fire. Jackson's voice was steady as he reported, "Contact Sector 12. 3 down, repositioning." Similar scenes played out across the station. The guards didn't just fight, they controlled the battlefield. Each had memorized every corridor, every room, every possible approach route. They used the station's layout like a weapon, channeling the pirates into killing zones where their superior numbers meant nothing. But the pirates kept coming. For every one that fell, 2 more took their place. Scarface Tobin had committed his entire boarding force to the assault, determined to crack this unexpected resistance. Guard down in Sector 5, came the grim report. Martinez took shrapnel. Still mobile but bleeding heavily, that left 11 active guards against over 500 pirates. The numbers should have been impossible, But the guards had advantages beyond their training. They were fighting for something larger than themselves, something that gave them strength beyond normal human limits. Every time a pirate rounded a corner expecting to find broken defenders, they instead found humans who simply refused to yield. Marcus watched through the observation slit as Guard Captain Vasquez coordinated the defense. Her voice never wavered, her orders never hesitated. She was a conductor orchestrating a symphony of destruction, each guard a perfectly tuned instrument in her hands. "This is impossible," Captain Rivera muttered. 12 people can't hold off an entire pirate fleet." Dr. Chen held his son closer. "Maybe we should have evacuated." But Marcus shook his head. "They're not just fighting the pirates, Dad. They're showing them who we are. They're showing them what humans do when you threaten something we love." As if summoned by the boy's words, the first wave of reinforcements arrived. The destroyer Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace like an avenging angel, its weapons already charging. Captain Thompson's voice crackled across all frequencies. "This is the Human Federation Navy. You are attacking a protected memorial site. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Scarface Tobin's response was predictably defiant. "One little destroyer against my whole fleet. You're outnumbered 40-1. Then it's a fair fight," Thompson replied coldly. The Vengeance opened fire immediately, its weapons lancing out to strike the nearest pirate vessels. The ship was severely outnumbered, but it had two advantages: superior technology and absolute righteous fury. The pirates had expected easy prey. Instead, they found themselves fighting a destroyer whose crew fought with the desperate intensity of people, defending their most sacred beliefs. Every shot was precisely aimed, every maneuver calculated for maximum damage. But one ship, no matter how well crewed, couldn't defeat an entire pirate fleet alone. That's when the second wave arrived. Admiral Chen's battleship Righteous Fury emerged from hyperspace accompanied by a dozen escorts. The Admiral's voice boomed across the battlefield. "All pirate vessels, this is Admiral Maria Chen of the Human Federation Navy. You have committed an act of war against humanity itself. Surrender now or face the consequences." The irony wasn't lost on Dr. Chen, who held his dying son and listened to his sister's voice promising destruction to anyone who threatened the tomb. Admiral Chen had been named for the very explorers buried here, and she took the pirates' assault as a personal insult. The space battle began in earnest as the human fleet engaged the pirates. But inside the station, the fighting continued. The guards had been pushed back to the final defensive perimeter around the tomb chamber itself. They had held for over an hour against impossible odds, but their ammunition was running low and their numbers were dwindling. 9 guards remaining, Vasquez reported to the incoming fleet. "We can hold the tomb chamber, but not much longer." "Understood, Captain," Admiral Chen replied. "Marine assault teams are inbound. Hold for 5 more minutes. 5 minutes might as well have been 5 hours. The pirates, desperate now that the fleet battle was turning against them, threw everything they had at the final defense line. They knew that if they could just breach the tomb chamber and take hostages, they might still escape with their lives. They had clearly never studied human history. Guard Corporal Kim, wounded but still fighting, held the main corridor with nothing but his sidearm and unbreakable determination. When the weapon ran dry, he drew his ceremonial sword, a weapon that hadn't been used in combat for over a century. The pirates who rounded that corner found themselves facing a human who had stepped straight out of humanity's warrior past. Kim fought with a ferocity that belonged to ancient battlefields, his blade weaving patterns of death that no modern soldier had ever learned to counter. Marcus watched in awe as the guard held the corridor alone, his sword flashing in the emergency lighting. "Mom, look. He's like a knight." Dr. Chen couldn't speak. She was watching her species' finest hour, and it was being written in the blood of 12 people who had chosen duty over life itself. The Marines arrived just as the final guard position was about to be overrun. They came through the walls, the floors, the ceiling, everywhere at once, their assault pods delivering them directly into the heart of the battle. But they weren't just any Marines. These were volunteers from the elite units, soldiers who had heard the guards' desperate stand and requested immediate transfer to the rescue mission. They fought with a fury that matched the guards themselves, determined that not one more defender would fall. The tide of battle turned in an instant. The pirates, caught between the immovable guards and the unstoppable Marines, broke and ran. Those who tried to fight were cut down without mercy. This wasn't just a military operation. It was a crusade. As the last pirate fell, Guard Captain Vasquez allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The tomb was secure. The heroes slept undisturbed. The watch continued. And in the observation chamber, a dying child had witnessed the greatest display of human courage in a generation. The silence that followed the battle was more profound than the chaos that had preceded it. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the tomb chamber as medics tended to the wounded guards. Of the original 12, only 7 remained on their feet. The others had paid the ultimate price defending humanity's most sacred site. Marcus pressed his face against the observation slit, watching as the surviving guards slowly returned to their posts. They moved with the same mechanical precision as before, but something had changed. They had been tested in ways their predecessors never had, and they had proven worthy of their trust. "It's over," Dr. Chen whispered, holding his son close. "They did it. They actually held them off." Captain Rivera was reviewing damage reports on her datapad, her face pale with shock. "Incredible. 12 guards against 500 pirates, and they won. The casualty reports are, this shouldn't have been possible." But Marcus understood what the adults seemed to miss. The guards hadn't won because of superior numbers or better weapons. They had won because they represented something that couldn't be defeated by force, the unbreakable human spirit that had carried their species from a single world to the stars, themselves. The blast shields retracted with a hydraulic hiss, allowing the observers to see directly into the tomb chamber once again. Guard Captain Vasquez stood at attention beside the central memorial, her dress uniform torn and bloodstained, but her bearing unchanged. She had been wounded in the fighting. Marcus could see the field bandage on her left arm, but she remained at her post. A Marine colonel approached the chamber entrance, his own uniform bearing the scars of recent combat. "Captain Vasquez, I'm Colonel Morrison, 15th Marine Assault Battalion. I need to speak with you about the battle." "Sir," Vasquez replied formally, "the tomb is secure. All hostile forces have been eliminated or captured. The watch continues." Morrison nodded respectfully. "Captain, what you and your people did here today, there aren't words for it. Command wants to recommend your entire unit for the Medal of Honor." "That won't be necessary, sir," Vasquez replied. "We were simply doing our job." "Your job?" Morrison stared at her in disbelief. "Captain, you held off an entire pirate fleet with 12 people. You lost 5 guards in the process, and you're calling it simply doing your job?" Vasquez's gaze never wavered. "Sir, our oath is clear. We guard this tomb until death. Today death came calling and we answered. Nothing more, nothing less." The colonel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He was looking at a kind of dedication that existed beyond normal military understanding. These weren't just soldiers. They were something older, something that connected directly to humanity's deepest values. Marcus tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, can we go down there? Can we meet them?" Dr. Chen hesitated. The chamber was still technically a restricted area, and his son was desperately ill. But after what they had witnessed, normal rules seemed inadequate. Captain Rivera overheard the request. "I can arrange it," she said quietly. "After what that boy just saw, he deserves to meet them properly." The process took nearly an hour. Security clearances had to be verified, medical equipment arranged for Marcus's condition, and formal permission granted by the guard commander. But eventually, the Chen family found themselves standing at the entrance to the tomb chamber itself. Marcus was in his mobility chair, oxygen mask covering half his small face, but his eyes were bright with excitement. This was closer to his heroes than he had ever dreamed possible. Guard Captain Vasquez approached them slowly, her ceremonial sword still at her side. Up close, the signs of recent battle were more obvious. Scorch marks on her armor, dried blood on her gloves, exhaustion in her dark eyes. "You must be Marcus," she said, kneeling to bring herself to his eye level. "I heard you wanted to meet the guards." Marcus nodded, suddenly shy in the presence of his idol. "You're really them? You're really the tomb guards?" "Yeah, we are," Vasquez confirmed. "And you're the boy who refused to evacuate during the battle." "I wanted to see," Marcus whispered. "I wanted to see what real heroes look like." Something changed in Vasquez's expression. For the first time since the fighting began, her military composure cracked slightly. "Heroes? Marcus, we're just people doing our job. No, Marcus said with the clarity that sometimes comes to children facing their own mortality. Heroes aren't people who aren't afraid. Heroes are people who are afraid but do the right thing anyway. You were all afraid today, but you stayed anyway. Dr. Chen started to correct his son, but Vasquez held up a hand. He's right, she said quietly. We were afraid. Anyone who says they weren't afraid facing those odds is lying. But you stayed, Marcus pressed. Even though you might die, you stayed to protect them. He gestured toward the memorial pedestals. That's what heroes do. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her uniform and withdrew something that made the adults gasp. Her guard's insignia, the golden badge that only 12 people in the galaxy were authorized to wear. Marcus, she said carefully, how much do you know about the guard's traditions? Everything, Marcus replied immediately. I've read every book, watched every documentary. I know about the changing of the watch, the oath of service, the medal of remembrance. Then you know about the Guardian's promise, Vasquez said. Marcus's eyes widened. But that's only for other guards. When one of them dies, the others promise to carry their memory forward. The Guardian's promise isn't limited to guards, Vasquez explained. It can be extended to anyone who truly understands what we protect here. Anyone who proves themselves worthy of carrying the flame. She held out the insignia, its golden surface reflecting the chamber's lights. Marcus Chen, you sat in that observation chamber and watched us fight for our beliefs. You understood what we were fighting for better than most adults ever will. You have the heart of a guardian even if you can't carry the sword. Marcus stared at the badge in wonder. But I'm just a kid. And I'm dying. So were the first explorers when they made their choice, Vasquez said gently. Age doesn't matter. Health doesn't matter. What matters is understanding that some things are worth any sacrifice. She placed the insignia in Marcus's small hands. This belonged to Guard Corporal Jackson. He died today defending this chamber, but before he died he made me promise something. What? Marcus whispered. He made me promise that if we survived we would find someone worthy to carry on his memory, someone who understood what we fight for. Vasquez smiled, and for the first time since the battle it was a genuine expression of joy. I think he would approve of our choice. Marcus clutched the insignia to his chest, tears streaming down his face. He had come here hoping to meet his heroes. Instead, he had been welcomed into their ranks. But this was only the beginning of what the guards had planned for the boy who had witnessed their finest hour. Word of Marcus's recognition spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Within hours, the story had reached every ship in the system. A dying 8-year-old boy had been made an honorary guard, the first civilian ever to receive such recognition. But more than that, he had earned it by displaying the same courage and dedication that defined the guards themselves. Admiral Chen requested a private meeting with her nephew's family. She arrived at the medical bay where Marcus was resting, still clutching Corporal Jackson's insignia. Despite sharing a name with the first explorers, the Admiral had never visited the tomb before. Her duties kept her on the frontier, fighting to protect humanity's expanding borders. So you're the young man who impressed my guards, she said, settling into a chair beside Marcus's bed. She was a stern woman, her face marked by years of command decisions, but her voice was gentle when she spoke to her grandnephew. Aunt Maria, Marcus said weakly. The excitement of the day had drained his limited energy, but his eyes still sparkled when he looked at the insignia. They gave me Corporal Jackson's badge. They said I'm an honorary guard now. I heard, Admiral Chen replied. Do you understand what that means? Marcus nodded solemnly. It means I have to remember. I have to carry the flame forward, even if I can't carry the sword. The Admiral exchanged a meaningful look with Dr. Chen. James, Sarah, could I speak with you privately for a moment? They stepped into the corridor, leaving Marcus with a Marine medic who had volunteered to keep him company. Admiral Chen's expression was troubled as she faced her relatives. The doctors on New Terra gave him 3 weeks, she said quietly. How long does he actually have? Dr. Chen's voice was barely a whisper. Days, maybe a week if we're lucky. The neural degeneration is accelerating. He's been hiding how much pain he's in because he didn't want to miss this. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. What if I told you there might be another option? Maria, we've tried everything, Dr. Sarah Chen said. Every treatment, every experimental therapy. There's nothing, not medical treatments, the Admiral interrupted. Something else entirely. She activated her personal datapad, displaying a classified file. This is Project Memorial, a top-secret initiative that's been in development for the past 5 years. We've been working on a way to preserve the memories and experiences of our finest military personnel, creating a permanent record of their knowledge and dedication. Dr. Chen frowned. You're talking about consciousness transfer. That's theoretical at best, and even if it worked, it's not consciousness transfer, Admiral Chen corrected. It's memory preservation. We can create a perfect digital record of a person's memories, experiences, and personality patterns. The original consciousness remains unchanged, but we create a backup that can interact, learn, and grow. A computer simulation, Dr. Chen said flatly. More than that. A living memorial that can teach future generations, share experiences, and maintain the values that made the original person special. Admiral Chen's voice carried absolute conviction. The guards have been selected as the first test subjects for the program. Their knowledge and dedication are too valuable to lose to time. The implications hit both parents simultaneously. Dr. Sarah Chen spoke first. You're asking us to make our dying son into a computer program. I'm offering to ensure that Marcus's courage and understanding are never forgotten, Admiral Chen replied firmly. That little boy in there grasps something about humanity that most adults never achieve. His perspective, his insights, his pure understanding of what it means to be human, that shouldn't die with his body. This is insane, Dr. Chen protested. Even if the technology works, Marcus isn't a soldier. He's a child. He's an honorary guard, Admiral Chen countered, which means he's eligible for the same benefits as any other guard, including memorial preservation. They argued for nearly an hour, voices rising and falling as they debated the ethics, the risks, and the implications of the procedure. But in the end, it came down to a simple question. Would Marcus want his memory to live on, or would he prefer to face oblivion? When they returned to the medical bay, they found Marcus listening intently as Guard Sergeant Kim told him stories about the tomb's history. The guard had been wounded in the battle but had insisted on coming to meet the boy who had watched their finest hour. Marcus, Dr. Chen said gently, we need to talk to you about something important. The boy looked up at his parents, and they could see that he already knew. Perhaps it was the solemn expressions on their faces, or perhaps he was simply more perceptive than they gave him credit for. Either way, he understood that his time was running out. How long? He asked simply. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice broke slightly. Not long, sweetheart. Days at most. Marcus absorbed this information with the same quiet courage he had shown throughout his illness. Then he looked at Admiral Chen. You have something you want to ask me, don't you? The Admiral explained Project Memorial in terms an 8-year-old could understand. She told him about the possibility of preserving his memories, his thoughts, his understanding of what it meant to be brave. She explained that his digital self could live on, teaching others about courage and dedication. Would I still be me? Marcus asked. In every way that matters, Admiral Chen assured him. Your memories, your personality, your way of seeing the world. All of it would be preserved exactly as it is now. Marcus was quiet for a long time, turning Corporal Jackson's insignia over in his small hands. Finally, he looked up at the adults surrounding his bed. If I do this, will I be able to help other sick kids? Kids who are scared like I was? Yes, Admiral Chen said without hesitation. You could talk to them, share your experiences, show them what real courage looks like. And I'd be with the other guards? In the digital memorial? You'd be part of their eternal watch, Sergeant Kim confirmed. Forever. Marcus smiled, and for a moment the adults could see the healthy, vibrant child he might have been in a different world. Then I want to do it. I want to help other kids be brave. The decision would change everything, not just for Marcus and his family, but for the future of humanity itself. They were about to create the first civilian consciousness preserved in digital eternity, a child whose courage would inspire generations yet unborn. But first, they had to say goodbye to the boy he had always been. The Memorial Preservation Chamber was unlike anything the Chen family had ever seen. Deep within the tomb station's most secure section, the room hummed with advanced technology that seemed to bend space itself around its central apparatus. Quantum processors lined the walls, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Elena Vasquez, different from Guard Captain Vasquez, though they shared a surname, was the chief scientist for Project Memorial. She had spent the last 5 years perfecting the consciousness mapping technology, driven by the knowledge that humanity's greatest heroes were mortal, and their wisdom could be lost forever. The process is completely painless, she explained to Marcus, who sat in his mobility chair studying the chamber with fascination rather than fear. You'll feel a slight tingling sensation as the quantum scanners map your neural patterns, but that's all. It's like having a very thorough medical scan. Marcus nodded, still clutching Corporal Jackson's insignia. Over the past 2 days, his condition had deteriorated rapidly. He could barely speak above a whisper now, and his parents could see the effort it took him just to stay conscious. "Will I remember everything?" he asked. "Even the scary parts?" Dr. Vasquez smiled gently. "Everything that makes you who you are will be preserved. Your memories, your emotions, your way of thinking about the world. The digital version of yourself will be completely authentic. It will remember this conversation. Remember being afraid. Remember choosing to be brave anyway." The guards had assembled for the ceremony. All surviving members of the tomb detail stood at attention around the chamber, their dress uniforms immaculate despite the recent battle. They had voted unanimously to include Marcus in the memorial program, recognizing in him a spirit that embodied everything they protected. "Before we begin," Guard Captain Vasquez announced, "there's something we need to do." She stepped forward, carrying an object that made the assembled witnesses gasp. It was a guard ceremonial sword, but not just any sword. This one bore the name Jackson engraved on its blade. Corporal Jackson's final request, she explained, was that his sword be passed to whoever received his insignia. "Marcus Chen, by the authority vested in me as guard captain, I present you with the blade of memory." Marcus's parents started to protest. Their dying son couldn't possibly handle a military sword, but Marcus himself reached out with surprising strength to accept the weapon. It was proportioned for an adult, far too large for his small hands, but somehow he managed to hold it steady. "I promise," he whispered, "to guard the memory of those who came before." The blade began to glow with a soft, internal light. Dr. Vasquez stared in amazement. The sword's quantum-bonded metal was responding to Marcus's biosignature, something that should have been impossible for a civilian. "Extraordinary," she murmured. "The weapon recognizes him as a legitimate guardian. I've never seen anything like it." The preservation process began with Marcus being positioned on a crystalline platform at the chamber's center. Scanning arrays descended from the ceiling, bathing him in patterns of light that mapped every neuron in his brain. The quantum processors worked to capture not just his memories, but the unique patterns of thought that made him Marcus Chen. Dr. Chen held his wife's hand as they watched their son undergo a procedure that would fundamentally change the nature of his existence. This wasn't death, but it wasn't traditional life either. They were pioneering a new form of human continuity that could revolutionize how their species dealt with mortality. "Neural mapping at 90%, Dr. Vasquez reported. "Personality matrix stabilizing. Memory integration proceeding normally." Marcus lay still on the platform, his eyes closed but his face peaceful. The sword rested beside him, its glow slowly synchronizing with the scanning patterns. Somehow the blade was integrating itself into the preservation process, becoming part of Marcus's digital existence. "Mapping complete," Dr. Vasquez announced, beginning personality integration sequence. The chamber filled with a harmonious hum as the quantum processors worked to weave Marcus's consciousness into digital form. This was the critical moment, the point where his memories and personality patterns would be translated into a format that could exist independently of his biological brain. "Integration successful," came the report. "Digital consciousness is stable and responsive." Beginning activation sequence. A holographic projector activated in the corner of the chamber. And suddenly Marcus was there, not as a fading 8-year-old, but as a perfect digital representation of himself at his brightest and strongest. The holographic Marcus looked around the chamber with wonder, then down at his physical body still lying on the platform. "Did it work?" the digital Marcus asked, his voice clear and strong. "Am I really here?" Dr. Chen couldn't speak. She was looking at her son, truly her son, with all his memories and personality intact, but knowing that his physical form was fading even as they watched. "Hello, Marcus," Dr. Vasquez said gently. "How do you feel?" "Different," digital Marcus replied honestly. "I can feel the sword. It's part of me now somehow, and I can sense the other guard. Wait. His expression changed to one of wonder. I can feel them. The first explorers. They're here in the digital space too? Dr. Vasquez nodded. The memorial program has been running longer than most people know. We've been preserving the consciousness patterns of humanity's greatest heroes for decades, creating a digital repository of human excellence. You're joining a very select group. Am I the youngest? Marcus asked. By several decades, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. But after what you've shown us, no one questions your right to be here. The physical Marcus opened his eyes one last time, looking directly at his digital self. For a moment, the two versions of the same person regarded each other with mutual understanding. Take care of Mom and Dad, the dying Marcus whispered. I will, his digital counterpart promised. And I'll help other kids be brave, just like you taught me. Physical Marcus smiled, closed his eyes and was gone. But Marcus Chen lived on, his consciousness preserved in digital eternity, alongside the greatest heroes humanity had ever produced. The guards' promise had been fulfilled in a way none of them had ever imagined. The boy who had watched their finest hour would now stand eternal watch beside them. The funeral would come later, as would the questions about ethics and the implications of digital immortality. But in that moment, in that chamber filled with quantum light and the glow of an impossible sword, something unprecedented had happened. Death had been defeated not by medical science or technology, but by the simple human refusal to let courage and goodness die with the flesh that contained them. Marcus Chen, honorary guard and first civilian consciousness in the memorial program, began his eternal watch. 5 years had passed since the battle at the tomb of the first explorers, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The story of Marcus Chen, the dying boy who became humanity's first civilian digital consciousness, had spread far beyond human space, inspiring species across the galaxy, and fundamentally altering how sentient beings viewed mortality itself. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her new office aboard the research station Memorial's Light, looking out at the massive digital preservation complex that had grown up around the original tomb. What had started as a secret military project had evolved into humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. The promise that courage, wisdom, and goodness need never truly die. Mom, came a familiar voice, and Sarah turned to see Marcus's holographic form materializing beside her desk. He appeared older now, though not in years. The digital consciousness had grown and learned, developing a maturity that came from interacting with thousands of children facing their own fears and illnesses. Hello, sweetheart, Sarah said, just as she had every day for the past 5 years. The grief of losing her physical son had never fully faded, but it had been tempered by the joy of watching his digital self become something extraordinary. We have visitors today, Marcus announced, his expression bright with anticipation. A delegation from the Andromedan Council wants to learn about the memorial program. And there's a little girl from Proxima Centauri who's been asking to talk to me specifically. Sarah smiled. Marcus's role as a digital counselor for sick children had become legendary throughout human space. His unique perspective, a child who had faced death and emerged transformed rather than defeated, gave him a connection with young patients that no adult could match. The girl from Proxima, Sarah asked. What's her situation? Marcus's expression grew serious. Genetic disorder similar to what I had. She's 8 years old, scared, angry at the universe. Her parents are considering the memorial program, but she's refusing. She says she doesn't want to become a computer ghost. The memorial program had expanded far beyond its military origins. Hundreds of consciousnesses now existed in the digital space. Soldiers, scientists, artists, teachers, and even ordinary people who had shown extraordinary courage in the face of death. But Marcus remained unique as the program's youngest participant and its most effective advocate. Show her Jackson's sword, Sarah suggested. That always helps them understand. Marcus nodded and vanished, his consciousness transferring to the children's ward where young Elena Rodriguez waited with her parents. The girl was small for her age, made smaller by her illness, but her eyes burned with a defiance that reminded Marcus of himself years ago. You're the computer boy, Elena said without preamble when Marcus's hologram appeared. Everyone says you're real, but you're just a program. I'm real, Marcus replied simply. Watch. He concentrated, and his quantum sword materialized in his holographic hands, glowing with the same inner light it had possessed when he was alive. This belonged to a guard who died protecting something important. When I was dying, he chose to pass it to me. Now it's part of who I am in here. He tapped his digital chest. Elena stared at the sword, her anger wavering. But you're dead. Your real body is dead. Yes, Marcus agreed. But I'm still me. I still remember being scared. I still remember thinking I'd rather die than become something different. But you know what I learned? What? Being different isn't the same as being wrong. I can do things now that I never could when I was alive. I can talk to kids all over the galaxy. I can share what I learned about being brave. I can help people in ways I never could before. Elena's parents watched anxiously as their daughter struggled with the same decision Marcus had faced years earlier. The memorial program wasn't forced on anyone. Every candidate had to choose freely, understanding exactly what they were accepting. Will it hurt? Elena asked quietly. No, Marcus assured her, and you'll still be you. You'll remember everything. This conversation, being scared, choosing to be brave. You'll just be more than you were before. The conversation continued for hours, with Marcus patiently answering Elena's questions and fears. By the end, she had made her choice, the same choice hundreds of others had made since Marcus first proved it was possible. Meanwhile, in the research facilities, Dr. James Chen worked alongside alien scientists who had traveled from across the galaxy to study the memorial technology. The program had become humanity's most significant contribution to galactic civilization, proving that death was not an ending but a transformation. Dr. Chen, called Dr. Zareth, a crystalline being from the Vega system, the consciousness transfer for the young Rodriguez girl is scheduled for tomorrow. Will Marcus be participating in the integration ceremony? He wouldn't miss it, James replied. Elena will be the 847th consciousness preserved in the memorial system, and Marcus has been involved in nearly every case involving children. The alien doctor's crystal structure flickered, the equivalent of a thoughtful expression. Your species continues to amaze us. To turn death itself into a form of service, to make mortality a choice rather than an inevitability. It defies everything we thought we knew about biological existence. We're a stubborn species, James said with a smile. We don't accept impossible very easily. That evening, the Chen family gathered for their weekly dinner, a tradition they had maintained despite the unconventional nature of their situation. Sarah and James sat at their usual table while Marcus's hologram joined them, creating the illusion of a normal family meal. Admiral Chen sends her regards, Marcus reported. The memorial program is being expanded to military installations throughout the frontier. She wants to ensure that no hero's sacrifice is ever truly lost. And the tomb? Sarah asked. How are the guards? Still standing watch, Marcus replied. Though they're not alone anymore. The digital guardians are there too, me included. We maintain the eternal vigil alongside our physical brothers and sisters, it was true. The memorial consciousness now formed a parallel guard unit, their digital selves capable of monitoring threats and coordinating responses in ways that supplemented the living guards. They had become humanity's ultimate expression of dedication, warriors who literally could not be killed, protectors whose watch would continue until the stars themselves burned out. Any word from the other species? James asked. Are they developing their own versions of the program? Marcus nodded enthusiastically. The Centauri are working on something similar, though their approach is different. The crystalline races are natural information storage beings, so they're fascinated by our artificial methods. Even the machine intelligences are interested. They want to understand how biological consciousness can be preserved so perfectly. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the station's communication system. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the wall display, her expression mixing pride and amusement. Sarah, James, Marcus, she said formally, I wanted to inform you personally. The Galactic Council has voted to establish the Marcus Chen Memorial Foundation, dedicated to expanding consciousness preservation technology throughout known space. They're calling it humanity's gift to immortality. The implications were staggering. What had begun as a dying child's wish to meet his heroes had evolved into a technology that could fundamentally change how every species in the galaxy approached death and legacy. There's more, Admiral Chen continued. The Council is requesting that Marcus serve as the Foundation's first director of consciousness integration. It would mean working with beings from hundreds of different species, helping them understand what it means to choose digital continuation over biological death. Marcus looked at his parents, then back at his aunt's image. Would I still be able to help sick kids? That would be your primary responsibility, Admiral Chen assured him. You'd be showing the entire galaxy what courage looks like, not just human courage, but the universal courage that all thinking beings share when they choose hope over despair. Marcus's hologram flickered as he processed this information. He had come to the tomb to meet heroes, only to discover that heroism wasn't about grand gestures or impossible battles. It was about making the choice to keep going, to keep helping, to keep hoping even when hope seemed impossible. I accept, he said simply, but I want to keep Corporal Jackson's sword. It reminds me that some things are worth any sacrifice. 5 years ago, a dying 8-year-old boy had made a wish to meet the tomb guards. That wish had led to a battle that proved human courage could overcome any odds, a technology that could defeat death itself, and a legacy that would inspire countless species across the galaxy. Marcus Chen, honorary guard and humanity's first digital immortal, began his new mission with the same quiet determination he had shown as a child, facing his own mortality. He would help others find their courage, just as the guards had helped him find his. And somewhere in the quantum depths of the memorial system, Corporal Jackson's consciousness smiled as his sword continued to glow with the light of unbreakable human spirit.